or good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you find this. Just want to talk a little bit today. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the system. Black people have been conditioned to follow the system, get in line with the system, but yet we have spent our entire existence complaining about the system. When we were growing up as kids, we were taught to go to school, get a good education so we can get a good job. In order to live well, maybe raise a family, travel the world, and save for retirement so we can thoroughly enjoy our golden years. Once we start working, we're taught that our income will decrease to a percentage of what we currently earn during our most productive working years. We're actually told by financial advisors, bankers, accountants, that this is a good thing because as we age, our needs decrease. But the part they don't tell you is that inflation continues to increase. Because each one of these statements that I just mentioned, with the exception of inflation, is a lie. We've went to school, and that's actually a control mechanism by the system to have us live, think, and behave the way that they want us to do so. The things we were taught in school did nothing to prepare us for the life they told us we could have. I mean, I can't tell you the last time I used algebra 2. Can't tell you the last time I used chemistry or physics or calculus or trigonometry or elementary analysis. I have never went to work and my boss asked me to take a history test, but we're never taught how to balance a checkbook. We're never taught how money works in this country. We're never taught how the economic system works in this country. And based on what we're seeing now, young ladies don't even know how to cook anymore since they took home economics out. I was watching something yesterday, and the lady was talking about, she told her husband when he met her and after they dated for a while, he proposed. And she said, well, I told him I don't cook, I don't go in no kitchen. And so if he plan on marrying me, he's gonna have to be okay with that. And the guy accepted that. And my wife doesn't like me to use the word, but he was stupid. Because I'm just gonna be honest with you. I would never marry a woman that didn't know how to cook and told me. It's one thing if you don't know how to cook, you weren't taught, and you say, well, I'm willing to learn. But it's another one when you just flat out tell me, I'm not going in the kitchen, I'm not going to try, I don't care. But I'm not here to talk about all that. I'm just talking about the system. And, I just, like I said before, I kind of go off on tangents because my mind is always running. But the education system and the school system did nothing to prepare us for the life they told us we could have. The education we received did a magnificent job preparing us to work for others and never think about working for and owning ourselves. Isn't that amazing? And how can I say that? Well, it's fairly easy because over 90% of the people in this American society work for someone else. Let me ask you a question. What do you think a good job is? Because there's no such thing. If we look at what's going on right now in this society, look at all of these people that are compromising their belief system because the job told them, if you want to keep working here, you better do what I tell you to do because I'm your slave master. I mean, your boss. But why were we never taught to get an education so we can start our own business. Sure, there are scholarships available when you attend college, but how many students get those academic scholarships outside of athletics? I mean, I see all these stories on a regular basis about this kid got accepted into 42 schools, got 42 scholarships, and this kid has $2 million in scholarship. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. That's a selfish individual. If you already know where you're going to school, look at all the other opportunity you're taking away from other people. But I mean, it's sickening. But outside of athletics, based on the enrollment at many universities around this country, those academic scholarship numbers are very small. So we get educated to go and work for someone else for the rest of our lives. And if there was no scholarship, we take out loans. Because when I was in school, they would give out grants, and they weren't, as far as I knew, they weren't a whole lot. I think I got a grant one time, and I think it was like $400 or something like that, and that was it. But I refused to take out any loans because I knew people were taking years to pay those loans back, and I just refused to do so. And so we take out loans, and depending on the school, those loans can take up to 20 to 30 years to pay back. What we place these guys on pedestals, and they think they're gods, these doctors around here. But most people don't know most doctors are still in debt at age 55 from med school. But they have to keep up appearances for society. So we start working, we start seeking, and we start looking to build a good life. But before the good life shows up, here comes a child. A couple of young men that I mentor got married, and they actually enjoyed the company of their spouses before they decided to start having children. Some of us are able to travel and enjoy some of the creature comforts of life. But in essence, we still haven't arrived because the boss dictates that lifestyle and that calendar. You don't get to determine it. He tells you if it's okay. I remember I was in management and retail management, and the company I worked for, we couldn't take any vacation time during the summer because of back to school. And then we couldn't take any vacation time the day after Thanksgiving up until the month of February because most companies were preparing for tax season. And so you look at the times that's left, and that's not the time of the year you really want to do anything. You want to travel during the summer, you want to travel during the holidays. And so your boss dictates when you can go on vacation. Yeah, he'll tell you have to take it within a 12-month period or you're going to lose it, but he still dictates, he still has to approve the days you X off. He dictates our lifestyle because he signs the paycheck. He dictates what type of house we can live in because he signs the paycheck. He dictates what type of vehicle you can drive because he signs the paycheck. He dictates if your kids can go to public or private school or participate in events that are things that allow them to display and develop their talents because he signs the paycheck. So they're dictating your life and they're still dictating your calendar. But they told us go to school, get a good education so you can get a good job and you're going to make it. That's why, as blacks, we were taught to get that education. And because that's the one thing they can never take it from you. Now, I have to admit, no one's ever tried to take my education from me. But I have had quite a few people who wanted to make sure I could not advance in the corporate game. So, as blacks, we focus heavily on education as a people. And here we are, 156 years since slavery ended, still trying to catch up to everybody else economically. Even the people who have only been in America for less than 20, 30, 40, 50 years are already outpacing us economically. They're way ahead of us economically. But everybody wants to know why we keep whining and complaining. And see, they're going to have to study a little bit more history because, see, the system tries to make sure it can do everything it can to make sure we don't learn our history. And they want to say, like Mitch McConnell said years ago, reparations for black people was Barack Obama being elected. Well, that's about one of the dumbest statements I ever heard made because the Dwight Eisenhower was black, or half black anyway, just like Barack Obama. And so there is also information out there that so was Calvin Coolidge. So if that's the case, you go back to Lincoln, uh, Thomas Jefferson, I believe, is it Alexander Hamilton? Because his brother could only attend a university that was for blacks only. And so if that's the case, our reparations got paid in a presidential office a long time ago. Y'all got to pay up. But people who've been here less than 50 years have outpaced us economically. People have been here less than 20 years, outpacing us economically. But we've been taught to focus on education, but it's amazing that the people who have come here within the last 50 years to the same country that we've been in and it's well over 400, because blacks were here long before slavery was officially started. The very first slave owner was a guy named Hugh Gwynn. I believe he owned slaves around 1502. I even believe he came over with Columbus, but the black Hebrews were already here even before Columbus came, because Columbus brought a black Hebrew translator with him, because they already knew who was over here in this part of the world. But these people have been in this country less than 50 years, and they come in with a focus on education. The same thing we were taught. And they focus on education for the last 50 years. We focused on education for 156 years. And they have gotten more of what society terms good jobs, and we're still scraping the bottom of the barrel. So how does everybody else focus on education get so much higher than us economically, who have actually been deemed the most formally educated people and group in this country? When we see anything promoted about blacks in this country, it's always the worst element about race or our top athletes. When we see other races promoted, it's always their best and brightest. Have you ever looked at FBI statistics? White men are by far the greatest number of serial killers, pedophiles, white-collar criminals, and rapists. White women are the biggest sex traffickers around the world. But we never hear about these things. But Tyrone robbed that stop and go image going to be plastered all over the TV. But they can never seem to publicize anything that's non-black. But we followed what the system told us to follow. The system told us what pattern we should follow. The same system that enslaved our ancestors told us how to come up educationally and economically. The same system that raped our ancestors told us how to come up in their system. The same system that beat, lynched, hung, and murdered our ancestors told us the best way to advance in their system. Do we pay attention to anything? I mean, really, do we? The slave masters were business owners. John Rockefeller, who started the American Medical Association, who started the public school system, who started the American Cancer Society, who started and financed the pharmaceutical industry, was a business owner. See, we just know we were taught he made all his fortune with oil, but we were never taught that he used that same oil to create pharmaceuticals, which made more and more people sick. And cancer was one of the biggest things that people were getting from his petroleum-based products, and that's when he created the American Cancer Society so he could silence that. Andrew Carnegie was a business owner. So we listened to business owners who told us that we needed to get jobs. See, John Rockefeller said he doesn't want a nation of thinkers, he wanted a nation of workers. And based on the industries I told you his family owns, because his family's still living, and looking at what we're dealing with, we've become a nation of workers. We can't think. I mean, how many videos have I talked about that? The system makes sure they will never pay us at the same rate as others in order to make life more difficult for us. Because if you listen to some of my other videos, you'll understand why they're trying to make sure life stays and remains hard for us as a people. When you start looking at what happened with your heritage, when you start looking at more than uh, the slave ships, and you start looking at how we were royalty before the Europeans came and hijacked that as well. See, that's the stuff the system doesn't want you to learn about yourself. The system doesn't want you to learn that you are the seed of Jacob. You are the seed of Israel, because Jacob is Israel. The system told you that Ashkenazi descendants were the seed of Israel. And so that's what they're trying to hide from you. So the system makes sure they do everything to keep us down economically, because the thing they're afraid of is if we get enough economics, they're afraid that we're going to turn around and do the same thing to them that they did to our ancestors. And that's what they're afraid of. And they feel if we get enough money, then we'll start putting more money toward our true thinkers and black scholars. And then they'll start educating us on who we really are. And that's what they're afraid of. I remember one of my aunts had been working for this company for years, doing an excellent job, degree in business something. I don't think it's business management, business something. But I remember when she graduated college in 1983, I believe it was, with her business degree. And she had been doing an excellent job for this guy. And a young white guy had just graduated from college, and he applied at the company. And he was offered a higher starting salary than my aunt was making after several years working for this guy. My aunt immediately quit. I mean, she and I talked about it. And, I told her, I said, you know how the system works. But she quit anyway. And so I worked for a company, and they had been sold. And they told us they were shutting down, but the new company wanted to keep some of us. And I was one of those who was actually offered a job. I didn't want to work for the new company because I wasn't interested in working nights. I wasn't interested in working weekends anymore. And I made a decision that I wasn't going to work for them. I had worked night and weekends because I spent a lot of years working retail in various capacities. And I didn't want to do nights and weekends anymore. I had went through that period where I was trying to get promoted, and they did everything they could to make sure I couldn't. And by the time I came out of that system and went in other capacity in retail, I was done with it. I was done with nights and weekends. And so a coworker of mine who's white had interviewed with another company, and he was actually offered us a job with a starting salary of about $75,000 a year. At the time, this was 1998, so this was 23 years ago. Once he was hired, he called me because he and I had worked together at a couple places, and he said he wanted to bring me on with the company, and they had a position open, and it was paying $25,000. I told him thanks, but no thanks. He tried hard to convince me that the job would be easy for me because of my background. Well, I would have to work some weekends. I would have to work some evenings. And I told him, hell no. He takes a job making 3 times what he wanted me to accept. And that's how the system has conditioned those who are not black to deal with us economically. And whatever they offer, they think we should be happy just because. They think they're doing us a favor just because. They sincerely believe that as blacks, we're supposed to be happy just because a company is considering giving us a job. Why did my former coworker think My value was 25,000, but his was 3 times greater than mine. When I was in high school, the local newspaper posted the salaries of every high school football coach in the Houston area. I looked at the list and noticed something immediately. Black head football coaches were paid 2 to 3 times less than white coaches, even if their football records were about the same or worse than the black coaches. Now, as I've mentioned before, I've had multiple hospital stays, and in all of them, I've had one black anesthesiologist. We're talking about, what is it, 10 operations. And I've had one, so I've had 10 different anesthesiologists, one black. All of them work for the same company. And I doubt if his rate was cheaper because I was a black patient. His rate was 3 times less than his white counterparts. All of these anesthesiologists, like I said, actually work for the same company. So why was his rate 3 times cheaper than his white colleagues? With his rate being 3 times less, guess what that meant for his income? It's 3 times less. But we're doing what the system told us to do, right? We're told that the American dream is owning a home. And there's nothing wrong with owning a home. No, we're homeowners. But who sold us on the idea of locking ourselves into bondage for 30 years? Do you know the root meaning of the word mortgage? It literally means a death pledge. And many banks showed us how they operated when blacks applied for loans for homes. Go apply for a loan for a business if you're black. Fortunately, some people started paying their homes off in 10 to 15 years and started teaching others how to do the same because they started teaching people how to beat the system. If you really want to beat the system, we would start teaching early about saving and earning and things like that. And, don't go get a home until you can actually save up enough money to pay cash for it. Start, investing in things like that. And, but I'm not here to talk about all that other stuff. You can find you some financial people. There are a lot of great black people on YouTube that talk about wealth building and how to get out of debt and things like that. But they start teaching other blacks how to do the same. I heard the #1 financial planner in North America at the time say that a house is not an investment, even though we've been taught that all our lives. He said all a house does is suck money out of your finances every month. But the system conditioned us to be a slave to the banks for at least 30 years. The banks are owned by the system. The system owns the bank. Then we need transportation if we're going to work. I'm hearing now that car notes are 7 years long. 7 years? 7 years? When, I got car notes, my wife and I got car notes. I think they were 5-year notes back at the time, but I told her we ain't paying no car note for no 5 years. We didn't even pay car notes 4 years. We would try to get them out max 3.5, paid off 3.5. And even then, I wanted to be faster than that. But 3.5 is, the longest it ever took us to pay a car off. But the system has conditioned us to be slaves to the bank. We spend all of these years working to achieve, to still find ourselves feeling like something's missing in our lives. And it is. We've been lied to. We've been misled. Next thing you know, the system offers us home equity loans to extend their hold on us. Years later, they created what they call equity lines of credit. And just pay attention to the marketing of these commercials and ads. And then as you get older, they have now come up with these things called reverse mortgages. And they tell you that the system will once again access the equity in your home until the day you leave your house and pay you a stipend off of your own money every month. They sell you on the idea that no one is trying to take your home because your money doesn't have to be paid back until you leave your home. Well, at that age, when do you plan on leaving your home? It's when you die. So if you don't leave enough money via life insurance to pay the home off, your descendants have to come up with the money or your family will lose that home to the bank that you spent your entire life trying to secure. So we spend our entire lives chasing a dream that really doesn't exist for black people in this country. Sure, there are many whites who struggle as well, but when you look at average incomes by race, whites are not even next to blacks at the bottom of the chart. I think the people right above us are Native Americans. I looked at the Forbes 200 wealthiest people in the world list. There are plenty of Americans in the top 200. However, not one black American is in the top 200. So if we don't have the wealth to crack the top 200 and we sit at the bottom of the economic barrel as a whole, what the system promoted to us worked for us? You see, as a people, we have this thought process that as long as we make a little more than our family members and a few of our closest friends, that we've arrived. But train already left. No, we're still at the bottom. As a whole, as a people, as a race, as a culture, we're still at the bottom of the economic barrel. I don't care how much you make. As a people, we always want to talk about being a people, being a family. Okay, so as a family, we still are at the economic bottom of the barrel. We get excited about jobs that pay us 70, 80, 90,000 a year, and there's nothing wrong with that. I remember talking to a guy about, we were just talking about finances one day. And I was telling him, I asked him, I said, man, I said, what would it be like to maybe add $100,000 a year to what you currently make, what you currently earn? And he told me, I already make 100,000 a year. I said, okay, what about adding 100 to that where you can make 200 a year? But see, our thinking is limited when it comes to finances. I remember hearing a guy at a seminar make this comment. He said, if you think you're a big shot, get around somebody who makes in 1 month what it takes you 12 to make. And ask yourself, am I really doing that good financially? But when the guy told me he already makes 100,000, he had already reached what he believed was the pinnacle of economic success, especially if he made more than his family members. Many of us have no awareness on how to properly invest into the stock market as a people. I remember when I was in college, you know, y'all have heard me mention before that my dad had a lawn service, outside of his full-time job. I say it was my dad's lawn service, but every year he could, I was with him. It should have been, I guess it could have been hours. But in Third Ward, on one street, we had like 7 houses in a row that yards we cut. That made for a long day. And if we worked fast enough, he would do us a favor and we'll go cut two or three more somewhere else. Me and him. But when I was in college, I was still cutting yards with him in the Third Ward area, like I said. And one of the gentlemen whose yard we cut, he was a retired professor from Texas Southern University. And he would always come outside and talk to my dad. And, he would come out and talk to me. And he told me, he said, son, he said, when you get a little money saved up, I want you to come and see me. And I'm going to teach you how to properly invest in the stock market. Circumstances in my life kept coming up where I never could get anything saved up. And I mean, I wasn't spending money on dating and a whole lot of things. I asked my wife what kind of dates we had in the beginning when we first met. She said I was cheap. I wasn't cheap. I was frugal. But, at the time, my wife didn't understand what I had been dealing with financially my entire life. So it made sense to years later. So I never could get the money saved up to go and sit down and learn at this guy's feet. And he told me he could teach me how to start with just $500. And I could never accumulate the $500 at the time. By the time I got a little older and saved a few dollars, it had actually become too late for him to teach me because I went to see him and he had developed Alzheimer's and it had set in real bad. And so he recognized the face, but having a conversation with him wasn't the easiest thing. And I was always taught you listen to your elders, and I sat with him that day, and Dad wasn't with me. I just sat with him that day. I had my little hoop in my Ford Pinto, and I just sat with him, and the entire conversation, he just asked me one question over and over again, and over and over again, over and over again. And so, I never got the opportunity to learn anything before the illness set in. As a people, we're teaching our youth everything but how to handle and deal with money. One of the main reasons today youth struggled on jobs is because they have watched us and our parents work so hard and have very little to show for it. It's hard for them to want to follow that same pattern. They ask themselves, why should I spend all of my life working for somebody else and not be able to enjoy what life is meant to be? My wife said my granddaughter asked her, who came up with this idea of going to work all these hours a day for the next 40, 50 years of your life? Why we just can't walk around, enjoy nature as it was meant to be, free, without having to pay for it? And, you got all these trees and everything out there. Why we just can't live off the land like it was meant to be? And so, these kids are recognizing some things that we didn't, because we were sold on the idea of consumerism. We hate capitalism, but we love consumerism as a people. I mean, that doesn't even equate. I don't know how we love consumerism and socialism, but we hate capitalism. It doesn't equate to me. But that's our thought process. I don't know how we like guys like Karl Marx and Fred Engels. I don't understand. It's a struggle for me. But we're not teaching our youth how to handle money. They don't want the pain and struggles that we dealt with. Why do they want to go into debt for 30 years to own a house that even after you pay it off, if you don't pay the taxes, you're still going to lose it? The younger generation is not interested in that type of life. We were sold that. We were sold that over and over again by everybody. Our family, our family's inner circle, the school system, our teachers, coaches, everybody sold us on that. Think about this. The government sees your paycheck before you do, and they take a cut of it right off the top before you ever see it, even if you got direct deposit. They didn't do any of the work, but they sold us on the idea that if they take a little from us, that it would be for our benefit. Then with what you have left over, you require services to live and take care of your home, so the government then turns around and adds taxes to each one of those services. Every time you buy a product, it's taxed, unless that product has been classified as all natural. Then you pay your property taxes, you pay your vehicle registration taxes. When work needs to be done on the things you've already paid taxes on, like your car and house, taxes are added to those bills. When you rent a house, an apartment, or a condo, taxes are collected, but the renter doesn't see it because the cost is included within their rent. When you die, they tax your heirs on the money that you've paid taxes on several times over throughout the course of your working life. When you decide to invest money and it gains interest, you have to pay taxes called capital gains. You pay taxes for the public school system, even if you have no kids enrolled in any location in the area. I personally think when your kid graduates, you should be released from that tax lien. Or if you pull your kid out and put that kid in private school, or you decide to homeschool, taxes should totally be removed from your school taxes. We pay taxes for road and infrastructure repair, yet when you drive around whatever city you're in this country, it doesn't matter. The roads and infrastructure are in serious disrepair. They take tax dollars from us and use them to build toll roads and then charge us to use the roads we've already paid for. That sounds like double taxation to me. The government even got the churches in on the tax fraud. But they were slick in the word. They used the Bible to trick the church folks. And I mean, I used to do it because that's what I was taught. But the government told the church under LBJ, y'all loved LBJ. He gave us the civil rights, at least so y'all think. It was Eisenhower's bill, but you were taught it was LBJ bill. It was Eisenhower's bill, but you were told it was LBJ's bill. And LBJ also put in place the 501c3 status that said preachers can no longer criticize. the government, because the preachers were going to town on LBJ and his tyranny and his slave master thought process. So he gave the churches the 501c3 status. And they told the church to just tell the people, we won't call it taxation. We'll just go with the Old Testament teaching and say, give the church tithes. Because now we're not going to say tithes is food anymore like the Bible said it is. We're going to tell them tithes is money. And that way we can tax them again in the name of the Lord. How do you know if your church is a government corporation? At the end of the year, do they mail you a giving statement for tax purposes? If they do, they're a government entity. Isn't it amazing that we keep paying taxes, and every time you look around, a politician is looking at taxes more? Now, don't get it twisted. Both sides of the political coin are the same in this respect. Democrats look for taxes to be increased so they can expand the welfare state, and Republicans ask for taxes to be increased so they can expand the corporatocracy. Either way, the people lose. Is this making any sense to you? How were black people sold on the idea of chasing a dream that hardly exists in this country for black people? Y'all hear the thunder out there, maybe. But I think they said it's supposed to be raining for another week down here. So, but you got that tropical storm out there, I think Ida or something like that. But I'm not going to harp on the weather. I mean, in a lot of respects, things are much better for black people. But are they really? We don't have a lot of the open hate on display anymore. And even then, it was only pockets of hate. Yes, even white people participate in tribalism, where they have to follow group thought because they can't think for themselves either. Sadly, white people don't even realize who got their ancestors to display that open hate back then, which is the same group doing it today. The same group owns a great majority of the companies today and promote whites to higher positions, give them higher pay, so blacks will believe it is the Europeans white who want to keep them oppressed. Just like we're taught in the school system today that the European whites were the ones running the slave trade. It was not. Do you see why the younger generation has said they don't want to participate in a slavery system that we volunteered for, such as what we've been doing, such as what our ancestors did? They may have their own set of throwed off issues, but they recognize slavery at a young age, whereas many of us have been living 40, 50, 60, 70 years and we still can't see it. Has this American system benefited us as a people? As a people. I'm not talking about individuals, because when you find individual blacks that make money, either they sold their soul or they get ostracized if they beat the system at their own game. You know, you can take two different entities. You take Oprah Winfrey and you take Reginald Lewis, and I'll just leave that there. Do we still get profiled by police? Do we still get profiled by store owners? School teachers, even school teachers are profiling. I just saw something not too long ago where a principal over in Georgia, I believe, had the kids separated by skin color. About a year ago, I saw where one school was making sure the white kids got their lunch before the black kids, sitting at the same tables. So y'all want to tell me this system is better? Not too long ago, several months back, I think I mentioned on another video, white teacher made a kindergartner pick up feces with his bare hands. I don't care what the law says, that mama or that daddy should have went up there and beat the hell out of that teacher. But see, we're so forgiving to white people, but we won't forgive each other. We ain't got no unity as a people. Because so many of us have bought into the system narrative, and you're trying to become part of the system. You're trying to be just like white. You know, back in the 90s when Jordan was around, we say just like Mike. But since slavery was ended, black people have been trying to be just like white. And Proverbs 3:31 say, don't envy your oppressor and don't choose his ways. But we doing the exact opposite. Do banks operate under the exact same parameters when a black person wants a car loan, business loan, or a home loan? Do major companies come into the black communities around the country to offer us better goods and services? Do black men with degrees still get overlooked and displaced by white men with high school diplomas? Do white men with those same high school diplomas make more or less money than those same black men with those college degrees, even master's degrees, even PhDs? When a crime is committed, in more cases than not, who do the people say committed the crime, especially if they had a hand in the crime themselves? Because they say it was a black man, even if it wasn't a black man, because society has been conditioned so much that all black men are the biggest criminals out there. How is police response in the black community when a crime is committed? Does the justice system favor us? Do we get the exact same sentences for the exact same crimes as whites? I'm going to wrap this up with this. I read this one day on the website, Daily Money or something like that. And the article is talking about savings and retirement based on race. And I only pulled a few sentences and I wrote them. Well, I didn't write them down. I got them so I could read them to you. In 2019, white families on average had an account balance of $168,500, not including traditional employer pension plans. And so a lot of us, we're not taught to do that stuff. We were taught as black people to just let the government say what your Social Security, and that's how you're gonna live. How you gonna live on that? But white people get a different set of rules. But up from just under 35,000 in 1989, which is the year I graduated high school. Black families, by comparison, had an average account balance of 38,300 in 2019, and for Hispanic families, it was just 27,300. Now, you notice they didn't say the black and Hispanic families had that outside of an employer pension plan. Just want to point that out. Back in 1989, account balances for these groups averaged around $7,000. Over time, Congress has upped the tax benefit for retirement savers, but those benefits has disproportionately helped those who have extra money to put aside in a retirement savings account, aka high income households, which are mostly white. So after reading that and after everything I've talked about so far, I go back to a question I asked on a few videos back. I think the title might even have something like this. Why do we work so hard to protect a system that has never favored us and still shows us a degree of disfavor? Why are we still promoting the system of failure? What is that system? I gave it to you at the very beginning of the video. Go to school, get a good education so you can get a good job. Right now, more than any time I can remember, we are truly seeing how that system has betrayed us. I watched a video of a black doctor up in Michigan. She laid out her heart talking about how the status of black people will be hurt the most by the forcing the thing that's very dangerous. She said black ancestors made it through slavery and worked hard. And here we are with 70% of black folks are possibly going to lose their jobs because a new slavery has been implemented. Jesus was offered the whole world for his soul. What have you been offered for yours? A job? Passage into the church that you attend? Better education? Or education, period? Passage into the school? Your salary? I mean, what will you offer for your soul? I mean, when you think about it, you sold your soul to the same system that you've advocated against for your entire existence. You have complained that the system has mistreated us for 400 years. And now, all of a sudden, you trust the system.